these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge.
Live from a space capsule high above the Earth, pressed against the firmament like Garfield, suction cup to the back of a station wagon. This is This Week in Conspiracy. My name is Justin.
And I'm Brad.
And like always, here on the ones and zeros is Ashley. Shitty ass dirtball. How's your week?
It was all right.
It was all right. Okay, we'll get through the business here so we can get our show started.
Well, yeah, I mean, hey, we have some different laughter in the background today.
Right.
We have a special guest.
Oh, it's a special guest. It's Jim from the Majestic Ears Only podcast. And, well, how you been?
I've been doing all right. I am pretty excited to be here. I'm a big fan of your Instagram feed. That's where I get all my news anymore. Anytime you get likes, they're always my likes. And I knew this podcast was going to be legit because the very first episode I listened to, within 5 minutes, Brad was comparing Hershey's Chocolate World to Nazi Germany. And I knew right away it was going to be legit. So I'm happy to be here for the night. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Well, I'm glad you're here. He's our, what do you call him? Brad?
He's our alien expert.
Our local alien expert.
Yeah, local alien expert.
Yeah, so.
He's not the guy with the weird hair from the History Channel.
Giorgio.
But
that guy rules.
He's our expert.
He's our expert, yeah.
Thanks, guys. I'll take that.
He has better hair, I think.
Slightly.
But let's run through it. We want to run through our stuff here real quick. Instagram, This Week in Conspiracy. Our Facebook is This Week in Conspiracy. Our email is This Week in Conspiracy. And Ashley, what's our Twitter?
What's it, Gmail? Your email is at Gmail.
At Gmail, I'm sorry. No one emails us anyway. Who cares? Yeah,
and our Twitter's _conspiracy.
Okay.
You guys are on Twitter too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start following.
I got rid. Wow. Yeah, I don't follow Twitter anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't find you. I'm like, you didn't even follow your own
I used
page.
to be on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I got rid of it. I started going on Parler, and now I can't even get Parler.
It should
anymore.
be back, isn't it?
I think it's gone.
I heard it was back.
Well, it won't come up on my phone. So I don't know if there's an update.
We need to get back on the Twitter. We need more digital soldiers there. Because like people were leaving, but then somebody on Twitter is like, hey, you can't leave. This is the cyber battlefield right here. This is going down. I was like, all right, I like that. I'm going to stay. I'm gonna stay
Cyber
around.
Battlefield. I kind of like that too.
That's a good one. But you must be an insurrectionist if you're on Parler.
Yeah, why? I mean, I saw an interesting thing the other day where they were showing in real time the dots from your phone from the stage on January 6th as they all moved through the streets to the Capitol building.
Yeah.
Literally, you just watch the dots go over there and then disappear into the building. And the article was saying, like, they're watching you in real time. This isn't, hey, 6 weeks later we pulled the pings off your phone.
Right.
It was literally watching them walk across the mall to the freaking Capitol building.
I mean,
so
you run with guns. They're running with guns.
yeah, all those guns they took.
Well, have you guys ever looked at, if you have an iPhone, if you ever looked at the location settings menu, it's nuts. Like, you look through there and you're like, you know what? Like, there's no point in hiding because this basically shows everywhere I am all the time.
Yeah, everybody's always worried about getting chipped. We've been chipped.
We
probably
have been,
10 years ago.
You're right.
Or whatever, been 20 years since
This
we
is
had
just like the physical internal chip that they've wanted all this time.
Yeah, because everybody they did it willingly. They just carried it around with them everywhere they go.
Yeah, they've made something so indisposable that you have to have it on you at all times.
The only difference is you're allowed to turn this one off. Like, you can put this one away from you.
Yeah.
Like, internal, that one's never going off.
Well, remember that like a couple weeks ago when I said about when I lost my phone, how you're freaked out.
Yeah,
it's like built into you now. If you lose your phone, it's like you're dead.
Yeah, well, I think I freak out more because it's like I just laid $1,200 down, and like now you're out $1,200.
What kind of phone are you buying?
Like an iPhone's like $800 to $1,000.
Yeah, if you get the newest one.
Brad's in a higher tax bracket than us.
Yeah, he must be. I'm still rocking the 6S. I'm just fine over here.
I've had my.
How do they not shut? You must not be updated because every time I update my phone, They slowed that sucker down like nothing worked on it.
Oh, I'm not updating.
Yeah,
No automatic updates for me.
Mm-hmm.
No,
So like talking of chipping, speaking of chipping, is that sort of like the aliens when they probe you? Is that are they putting?
I don't know how big probing is anymore. Like I remember when the X-Files was in its heyday, late 90s, early 2000s, everything was about alien implants.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't hear that much about it anymore. So like there's different theories like this civilization is just about done with their monitoring phase. You're not going to hear about as many abductions. Or it's still happening like it always does, but because there's not a show on TV right now actively promoting it, nobody really talks about it.
Right. Well, I just sent you a thing on the X-Files last week,
right.
where it's all about the alien virus. I watched a little bit of the show, but I never really watched it. And then like I was reading an article and it showed like, not the finale, but it was showing where the guy was like, look, they took your kids so that you could live, but we got one of their babies so that we could try to create the antivirus to their virus so they don't kill all humanity off.
Right.
And I'm like, isn't that weird? Like, we're fighting this magic virus now.
That is the overall story arc. It gets kind of nebulous. It's not well written for the last couple seasons, but if you just want the quick like overview, watch the original X-Files movie. It's all about the alien virus. It's badass.
Yeah, I never watched X-Files.
Yeah.
Now, I know a little bit about aliens. From what I've read, there's like 11 different types of aliens.
Depending what leaked source you read. I mean, I would say you've got at least 4 main ones, but there's different leaks out there that list over 100 different species.
100 different species.
Yeah. I mean, going through it, I think based on the overall weight of eyewitness testimony over the past 50, 60 years, I think you're pretty certain on the Greys, the Nordics. The reptilians. Those are probably the big 3.
They're my favorite.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I'm definitely into the Nordics.
Yeah.
Because I kind of have like a Nordic look to me.
You do have a Nordic look.
I think the Nazis like the Nordics too.
Yeah.
Right. But then you've got like energy beings that some people think are angels. I kind of wonder, like, does life evolve past the point of even needing a physical body? Then there's a few thrown in there with like robots mixed in, avatars, like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I've heard stories of people thinking like the Greys might be like AI.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And that actually comes up a lot because people who have interacted closely with them talk about an overall hive mentality to it. I also read some unpublished notes from Phil Corso for a manuscript he never actually put out. It was pretty crazy. He had like a 3-column page where he compared the human body to a gray body to a different type extraterrestrial body. And he basically made the comment that it looks like these things are actually engineered for space flight. And so Avatar was a pretty eye-opening movie. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that a civilization couldn't just engineer something for space travel like that.
Well, it makes sense to send AI billions of light years or whatever across, and then humans or your actual species where it'd be harder to survive.
What if we were like giants and we could just like that?
Why are you making?
No, yeah, no, you're 6'7". Well, there's that episode of The Twilight Zone where it's all about the little spacemen and the lady looks like a giant. And it's like they're like, it looks like it's 1850 and like she's chasing them with a hatchet and stuff, and she crawls up on the roof and there's a spaceship and she like kills them.
Yeah.
And then it like zooms in, it's like U.S. Air Force, you know. So like we were like the miniature.
Right.
They were just a bigger race of people. Right. So AI would make sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're pulling with those leaked tapes the other day, they said that the one Air Force pilot was saying how they pulled like 30 G's straight up. And he was like 10 G's like crushes you and kills you as a human being. So. I mean, maybe in order to get across space, you need to engineer.
There's that angle. Like my big angle with all that is I don't think you can really look at UFOs in terms of traditional avionics, because that's always been the skeptical attack. Well, this eyewitness said from a standstill, it went 7,000 miles per hour and then changed direction and the G-forces would kill you. Yeah, if it was traditional avionics, but I'm pretty sure these things are using some form of space-time distortion where it's just basically relative movement. Like the crazy thing, if you think about how things move, like let's say this beer bottle here is the UFO. Like
He's holding a beer bottle.
you could move it back and forth like this, or you could keep it still and move the table underneath it, and you still get the movement. And so I'm pretty sure these things are just using some form of space-time distortion. I think you could be on board one of these and probably feel less G-forces than you ever could if you were just in a traditional airplane.
Right. That's what I was. They were listening to a guy talk about maybe even using like being able to cut through gravity, like use gravity to move or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah, and that gets into like Einstein's general relativity, where big masses bend space-times, but one aspect that he was officially never able to prove is called the unified field theory. And that's where he thought a strong electromagnetic field could also bend space-time. And that gets you into the whole legend of the Philadelphia experiment where the United States accidentally figured that out during World War II.
Yeah, where there's guys in the middle of the ship still when they...
Yeah, that's nuts, isn't it? I love that story. It's a great urban legend. Yeah. But, you know, the other thing that's fascinating, too, guys, about it is, like, there's so much overlap with these supposed alien species. Like, when you look at experiencer accounts from like the 50s and 60s, it's mostly with the Nordics. So like the very tall, long blonde hair, beautiful men and women that look like they're from Norway, Sweden, and Finland. So like the temptation is to think, okay, these must have been the good guys because they weren't really associated with abduction phenomenon. They tried to warn human beings about the dangers of nuclear war and pollution. They seem to act like space brothers. And then that whole archetype disappears by like the 70s, and it's replaced with like the menacing gray aliens, where there's not as much interaction, lots more abductions. And so it's tempting to think that maybe one civilization was here trying to help us out. We basically said, heck with that, we don't want that. They leave, create a vacuum that another civilization comes in. But there's been a number of eyewitness accounts when they went through regression hypnosis that describe seeing both Greys and Nordics on the same ship, where the Greys are kind of like in the foreground like the worker bees, and the Nordics are like back there in the shadows directing things. But then the real twist, I'm about to hit that bell, is, you know, at the end of World War II, about 250,000 Nazis went totally missing. And we know they were working on the Vril program, the anti-gravity discs. And so, not surprisingly, by the 1950s, people start to see beings coming off these ships that look exactly like Maria Orsich and the other women of the Vril Society. So it's like, were they even extraterrestrials at all? So there's just so much overlap with these.
Is that the, like, we know that there was, we talked about this. Did we talk about this already? With the Arctic base, the Nazis had an Arctic base. High jump. Yeah, it's still there. Like I was just listening to another podcast the other day where the guy like got on a sailboat with like 4 other dudes, went to the Arctic, hit the Polish base, like hung out with the Polish dudes for a while, and like they were all like, yeah, there's another base up there, it's German, you know, and they're talking about all these bases and stuff, and then. But like he's like, one of these days we're gonna go to that, you know, that German base. But like, I'm thinking like, did we really win World War II? No. If they had that technology,
right,
because they uncovered it or whatever,
right,
did they just like, you know, smash Admiral Byrd's fleet up in the Arctic and like, hey, you know, we're the winners, but we're gonna let you pretend like you won,
right? That seems to definitely be the theory. And the whole Vril Society, for our listeners who aren't sure, so this is basically a subgroup of one of the other German secret societies. And it was mostly beautiful German women that embodied like the ideals of German beauty. They supposedly grew their hair really, really long because it made them better receivers. And they had allegedly channeled a civilization from Aldebaran, which is a reddish-orange star in Taurus the Bull that's only about 60 light years away. Now, obviously, for us humans, that's really far. But for an advanced civilization, it's actually one of the closer stars to us. And that supposedly gave them the technology leap. And that confirmation even came from none other than Werner von Braun, one of the heads of NASA, who was snuck over here through Operation Paperclip. He basically said, like, this is where we got this big leap from. So the high jump thing is interesting. You've got the Antarctica story, but then you've also got the Arctic story. Mm-hmm. So the actual throwdown supposedly takes place in Antarctica.
Oh, I said it wrong.
No, that's okay. I know what you're... But
you're
then
you
weren't wrong about the Arctic. There's this side rabbit hole that entire thing was a diversion for Byrd to actually fly a mission over the Arctic and actually find the legendary hole that went down into the earth.
Right.
Did you guys ever
Where
hear that?
Godzilla was.
No, Hollow Earth, yes.
Yeah, this was the one
Is that where Godzilla and King Kong were from in the latest movie?
Yes.
Is it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They go
Was
to
Mothra in there
Hollow Earth.
too?
Yeah.
Chilling.
No, because, well, I don't want
Don't
to
give
ruin
it away.
Spoiler alert.
I like
Spoiler
I
alert.
haven't watched it.
But
Yeah.
this is when
I've heard this story.
Byrd flies in through this hollow hole and basically sees a couple extraterrestrials there. They put his plane in some type of a tractor beam or control and basically just standard warn him about the dangers of nuclear proliferation, then release the plane and he goes. So there's all kinds of side stories with it.
I mean, I've always been a firm believer like TV mimics truth.
Yes.
So like, you know, when we talk about aliens and stuff, is like when they talk about getting probed and stuff, is that like just some like ornery alien who's like, you know, we have a prime directive like in Star Trek where you're not allowed to mess with them,
right?
But like that's like the ornery dude is like, hey, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but no one's really watching.
Yeah.
So let me check this dude out.
Well, from what I understand is, I hear a lot of stories about them doing the probe and taking semen, like they're trying to like merge with humans a lot.
Yes.
Because like I've read things where they say like the Greys and the reptilians have trouble. They're like a dying race of people, so they want to merge.
Right.
Yeah, so Hillary Clinton and them allegedly.
Well, and you know, allegedly.
Well, you did that episode where you talked about some of the like crazy things videos that you found.
Yeah.
Where like their eyes like closed.
Like the whole shape-shifting thing.
Yeah.
So should we talk more about the probings? Because you seem fascinated by them, Brad. Or should we jump over into reptilians?
Hold on. I feel like I cut you off with the Arctic.
I guess there's so many directions.
I know.
You could do like a whole show with that. I think the big area that is really the focus now in Antarctica, I believe, is called Lake Vostok. And it is an absolute no-fly zone, even for the military that's down there. And it is a site of geothermically warmed lakes. There's been a number of UFO sightings. People have even found large holes in the ice on Google Earth in that general area. And then, was it you that was sharing this with me, or did I hear this last conference I was at? It was interesting how many dignitaries have been going down there. And right before the 2016 presidential election. Was that you?
That wasn't me.
Okay.
But I know John Kerry went.
Kerry was there. Buzz Aldrin was there. And what I heard at this conference, which was kind of an interesting twist, is one of the presenters thought they were all intentionally going there because they assumed Hillary was going to win. And as soon as she won, they were going to make this big announcement from down there, like, hey, we're really not alone. Look what's buried in the ice down here. But then she didn't win, and Buzz Aldrin officially got a heart attack. He had to get airlifted out of there, and so the story just kind of died.
They were going to say that, and then all their eyelids were going to shut opposite ways.
Yeah.
Because they're reptiles.
And I was going to put those sunglasses on from
They Live.
Yeah.
One of my favorite takes on Antarctica, though, is I really legitimately wonder whether it is Atlantis. Because officially, it wasn't even discovered till 1850. And then officially, the land outline wasn't even known till the 1980s when they went down and set off seismic charges. But there's at least two different maps that surfaced in the 1500s that not only show Antarctica, but the one in particular is from this French map maker, Orontes Phineas. It shows not only the entire continent, it's only about 2 degrees off where it actually is now, but it shows mountain ranges and river basins that are all currently totally buried under miles of ice. Like, he should have never known this. And so one of my takes is the entire crust, even though plate tectonics is real, the whole thing might just suddenly shift at once.
Well,
and so I think there's a really good chance that might have actually been Atlantis. And the reason there's so much interest now is our country knows it, Russia probably knows it, and they're excavating down under the ice to find as much of this technology as they can.
Well, I've read before where they say like there's been a polar shift.
Yes.
So where Earth is just totally rotated, or whatever, however it rotates, every 25,000 years or however long it is. I think it was something weird, like not like a. I know 25,000 years is a long time, but not like, man, like I can't believe that only happened.
Yeah, it wasn't an insane.
It wasn't like a million years ago. It was recent. So if that happens every so many years, that could totally be.
You're right.
Where it flipped.
Just to clarify, like there's a couple different movements. Like the 25,000 year thing, you're really close. Earth does this slow wobbly motion over 26,000 years called precession, where it wobbles like a top and traces out different North Stars. But then, if you look at the mid-oceanic ridges, where like it's blurping up new lava, it's making new crust and spreading out like a conveyor belt, every couple thousand years, for reasons that geologists can't explain, the whole magnetic field flips.
And that's moving right now.
Yes, it's moving pretty rapidly. So like all the little iron grains in the rocks, as it gets hardened into stone, they basically freeze like little compass needles. So every couple thousand years, they'll be pointing one direction. Then every couple thousand years, they'll be pointing another direction. It's like zebra stripes on the ocean floor. That's supposed to just be the magnetic field. So my take is, are we sure it's just the magnetic field? What if it's not the entire planet? And then I'm kind of tying that in this lecture I have on like Nibiru and Planet X leaping through.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
there's
I like
a lot of
Planet
crazy
X.
stuff there.
Anunnaki
Terrifying. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it terrifying, or are we just living the dream?
Well, I just think we look at all the national debt that we're in. We look at all the crazy.
We talked about that.
We look like they're spending money like there is no tomorrow. Like, what if they legit know there is no tomorrow?
Right.
That's why they're building all these underground bases, because they know the only way to potentially survive this is either go off planet or go deep underground.
That's a very good possibility, but either way, we're screwed.
Well, maybe that's like every 25,000 years that sucker comes whipping past us and just flips us.
That's my take.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Well, I didn't know you were going to bring
happens.
Black Pill Jim in. It's like we're already bad enough. We every week at the end of the show we have to like upbeat it because we just like destroy everybody's dreams.
I mean, we're getting it's so bad. We were just happy that the Pirates won last week.
We both sighed and looked at each other and we said,
Yeah.
we got to think of something to to say before we leave.
Now, Narumu is coming and it's going to flip us and we're all going to die.
Yeah,
So.
the 10th planet.
There's a lot going on.
Well, it'd be the 9th planet now because
Pluto don't count.
it don't count.
It's too small.
It's just a dwarf star.
What's the scientist there? The black dude.
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah. He probably said it didn't count no more.
That guy's an arrogant son of a bitch.
I hate that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Because on Instagram, remember I put that post up and you even said, yeah, I just can't stand him.
No, and it was funny because I had a former student teacher that was like up at Penn State when he showed up, and he insisted prior to his arrival that like all of the paperwork, all the promotions about his event, all said world famous physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. The other thing that's super sketch about that dude is there have been at least 4 female undergrads from the University of Texas all bring sexual assault allegations against that dude. And it just gets swept under the rug.
Allegedly.
That guy's the son of a gun.
Yeah. He looks like he's got a punchable face. Like,
Yeah, he
I
does.
mean, like if Bill Gates is here, like punchable face number 1.
Right.
That other doctor from
that Asian
from
dog.
CNN, she's got punchable face number 2.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a close tie. Like,
Neil deGrasse Tyson's above me for Bill Gates.
I mean, if he was standing in front of me and like Hillary Clinton was standing in front of me, and I only had one punch to throw,
right?
Like it would be tough to figure out who I wanted to punch.
I would like to punch Neil deGrasse Tyson because he's the alpha nerd. Because he used to wrestle and he thinks he's a badass because he hangs out with all these other nerds.
Right.
I'd punch him right in the face, then I'd stomp on Bill Gates.
Listen, Stop making fun of him. He's right here. Alpha Nerd's right next to me.
Well, he's
You know, the real shame of it too is like, I feel like African American kids need more science role models. Like, it's really important to have prominent African Americans in science that are out there doing things. I just wish this guy wasn't such a tool and isn't such a creeper on women.
right. Well, that's the big problem with him. But I just, when anybody brings up anything out of his like box of what he says is what's going on,
Yeah.
he just starts making fake. He won't even listen.
Yep. Bill Nye's the same way.
Well,
Yeah.
Bill Nye's not even like a real scientist.
No,
is
he's
he?
not.
Right?
No, he's
not.
He just makes stuff. He's as much a scientist as I am.
I know, right?
He's a piece of garbage. Too.
I have a degree
He is.
in business, and I'm a scientist.
I met him. It was terrible. I was at a science teachers conference one time, like early in my career, and this dude was there. And number one, you had to buy his books right there, and they were like crazy overpriced. Like you couldn't bring your own Bill Nye book. Secondly, dude had 2 bouncers on either side of him.
Yeah, because everybody's trying to get at Bill Nye.
Yeah. Then he must have just been really jacked that day. He would just like grab books from people, would not even make eye contact, zero personal interaction, just scribbled a name down, just handed it right back, and then just grab the next one. I'm like, my gosh.
That's why you had the 2 bouncers.
Yeah, seriously.
Because some
right?
guys, it's not a
There's
nerd.
some dude like me who like only took your kid because they saw him on Sesame Street and be like, dude, I'm gonna punch you right in the face.
Yeah, he rips
Yeah.
the bug out here. It's like,
Yeah.
you just grab a hold of him and start punching.
Right.
Some of these guys are so disappointing. I remember one time I was in college and like Jeff Corwin from Animal Planet, they like paid to bring him in. And like my college is really small. So like when they bring in somebody,
That's
it's
a
a
big
really
deal.
big deal.
Yeah.
And so like based on his schedule, he could only show up around like lunchtime on like a Wednesday. So like parents are like pulling their kids out of school. Like this little auditorium is totally packed for Jeff Corwin. So he comes in and he starts this intro. He's like, would you guys like to see a little white Bengal tiger? And like the kids are like, oh my gosh, yes.
I would like
He's
to see
like,
a white Bengal
yeah,
tiger.
right? He's like, come on, let me hear you. You guys want to see a little white Bengal tiger? The kids are like losing it. They're going crazy. Then he leans over to one kid in the front row. He goes, well, too bad. I didn't bring any animals. I'm like, oh my God, what a terrible person.
Wait,
Sure
wait,
is.
Face.
Yeah,
Hey,
right?
you just-
Like, you may have been bit by a freaking snake, but I'm about ready to punch your face
Oh
in.
my
Listen,
gosh.
you just turned me. I love this guy. This guy is amazing.
Yeah,
You
think-
turned me. He just went total heel.
I get where you're
Always a
coming
heel.
from. Like, part of me wants to punch the dude, but part of me's like, that's freaking.
That's a move.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
savage.
hard AF, dude.
Right. Kids are probably still going to therapy for that dude.
Yeah, just that one kid.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Hard
He's
enough.
got a squishy in his pocket.
Toughen up, man.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good.
I think we're getting off topic though, man. We're not even
Hey,
talking about aliens.
Please tell me you
anymore.
didn't meet Mr. Wizard and he's not sucked.
I didn't meet him yet.
'Cause I
Is he
love-
still alive?
I don't know. I
Okay.
love Mr. Wizard when I was a
Yeah.
kid, man.
Wait,
Sure,
wait.
it's legit.
So Bill Nye's not a real scientist.
No.
No.
Is Beekman from Beekman's World?
I don't know.
Does anybody remember that show? Am I the only loser?
No, you're younger than us.
Oh my gosh. And he's a scientist
Oh,
then.
you just killed the whole thing.
No,
So
it's a
let's get back
scientist.
to aliens.
All
So,
right, let's shut
And you
it
didn't
down.
raise your hand before you talked, so.
The only one we
I'm
really
sorry, I
didn't
didn't
talk
have
about
1950s.
is reptilians. And what I like there is it's so different than the other ones. So, like, people who have had abduction experiences, they recall a lot of this. It's never the reptilians on the actual ships. They tend to be more associated with caverns underground, deep underground military bases. And so one of the interesting takes there, it's called the native Terran hypothesis, is basically what if we're the actual extraterrestrials? They were here first, or they were here and we're making an assumption to assume that all the dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Because I remember, and this is crazy, maybe you guys have seen this, back in the early 80s, the Toronto Museum of Science had a very short-lived exhibit. There's basically, what if the dinosaurs didn't go extinct? And they took the Troodon, which was one of the more advanced dinosaurs from the time. Imagine like a velociraptor, but tinier. And they showed what it would look like if it had continued to evolve over 65 million years. And so it was bipedal, walking upright. They showed it holding like spears and wearing like loincloths and everything. And the exhibit was only up for like a couple weeks and then just totally disappeared. But you can still find the pictures of it online. So that's kind of an interesting take. Like, are we oversimplifying it to think that all these things are aliens from like out there? What if they were here first?
Right. Well, that's like the ancient, like the Indians have drawings of people coming out of the earth.
The ant people,
The
yeah.
ant people
yeah.
all the time.
Well, they also have the race of giants that ran the plains and like scooped up buffalo. And
Yeah.
I was wondering with that dinosaur lizard person.
I've seen pictures.
Is
of
that like the guy from the Land of the Lost? Remember the old
What, the
870s?
Sleesacks?
Yeah, where they're like,
Oh, those guys are terrifying.
yeah, they are creepy as hell. Anything from the 70s is creepy.
Yeah, they're even creepy in the remake. The Giants thing is interesting, though. One time I read this really interesting article where a guy researched it a lot, and I love this story. Is, you know, they always show it in Westerns when Native Americans like would greet people, they'd hold up their hand and say how. So the story behind that's fascinating. Supposedly, giants were like the mortal enemies of Native Americans, but giants all had 6 fingers. So part of the reason they did this greeting is, do you have 5 fingers or do you have 6 fingers?
That goes back to
Well,
our,
last week we talked about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, Obama with 6
Six-finger
fingers.
Obama.
that was
Yeah,
Did
how
you,
about
ever,
that?
did you see the painting?
Heck yeah, I've seen the painting.
That's crazy.
that was the name of our episode.
And I did hear that, and
Yeah,
I
I
just
heard
listened
that
to an interesting podcast. It was probably months ago, but they were talking about the Native American hills out in Ohio.
The Serpent Mountain.
Yeah, and that was all about. Like, it was like a certain height to keep the giants out. It was interesting. Cool.
Yeah. I'm on the fence with giants because on one hand, I have known multiple guys who went to my college who were volleyball players that were like over 7 feet tall. Because like our college was very small, but had a great volleyball program. They were national champions a couple times. These guys did not live very long. Like, tragically, they had heart attacks in like their 20s.
Sorry, Jay, you're 6'7", dude.
I always tell people, that's what I said. We were like, why don't you, I'm not afraid of death because you don't want to know why? Because how many times you see guys that are 6'9" walking around when they're 70?
Yeah. You don't see like 6'9" guys at the old age home. Like,
Yeah.
come here, sweetie.
Come here. I'm walking around, smacking my head off door frames and stuff.
But, like, I mean, that's only 7 feet. And, like, some of these stories of these giant skeletons are, like, 20, 30, 40 feet high. So, on one hand, I think there's no way it could be real because, like, the heart alone doesn't have the capacity to basically pump blood the whole way through a body like that. But at the same time, like, every significant ancient culture on Earth has really detailed stories about it.
Biblically.
Yeah,
And
and
the Bible.
they've
The
also
Book
found
of
them
Enoch.
too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like on Catalina Island off the coast of California, which is like a
Wait,
UFO hotbed.
Where's that at? again?
Catalina Island?
Catalina wine mixer?
The
Catalina
Catalina
Wine
Wine
Mixer, you know it.
Catalina wine mixer.
I'm going to punch you in the face.
I'll try to change that.
But they found, and this one was confirmed, they found a 9-foot skeleton on that island. And then there's a great side conspiracy about the Smithsonian covering so many of these things up.
Hiding the.
Well, I heard something too about they finding stuff like that in the not the Grand Canyon, the river, the big river.
In America.
Oh no, the Grand Canyon. Yeah, the Grand Canyon. They found a cave. I'm sorry, jeez.
Oh, we're all over this because you did a whole episode.
I did do
on
it.
it.
They found that cave in the Grand Canyon with all kinds of stuff in it.
Yeah, the Egypt of the Grand Canyon.
Yes, the Egypt of the Grand Canyon. Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much evidence that these cultures, there was a lot more global interaction than mainstream archaeology has led us to believe.
Well, that
Well,
also
yeah, I mean, only white people were allowed to discover things. So, yeah.
well, didn't that also disappear in the Smithsonian or something like that?
There have been a number of things that have. The other one that was debated, and it's been a while since I did that episode, there was that guy, and was it Indiana or Illinois, that supposedly found that cave underground.
Okay, I think I was Indiana, I think.
Yeah.
'Cause I listened to that episode, too.
That also had an Egyptian sarcophagus in it. And on one hand, you could say, well, isn't it just convenient every time one of these skeletons is unearthed? Somebody steals it, or there's a flood, and every part washes away except just like one bone. Right. But at the same time, there have been enough stories about they had this thing, the Smithsonian had it, they had it displayed, then it disappeared. And there's a number of times that museums have been caught with that, like the so-called Dropa stones in China. Those all disappeared. They had these little golden pendants that they found in Mayan and Incan tombs, which, if you've ever seen the original Ancient Aliens,
Yeah.
they were supposedly birds, but they had vertical stabilizers on them, which only airplanes have. So a couple engineers made them into actual airplanes, and they were perfectly aerodynamic. Then those all disappeared from the Smithsonian. So there's been a number of things that, if they don't fit the overall narrative, they just kind of vanish after a
Well,
while.
I mean, even in some of like the mainstream stuff. So I listen to Glenn Beck every day, and he's opening his own American History Museum in Texas. And he just acquired, he was talking about a couple weeks ago, the largest collection of, early American writings. So like books and papers and all this stuff from like the 1700s.
Like Joseph Smith.
Yeah. Dum 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 dum. But so he said the guy that sold it to him, like the Smithsonian was interested, and the dude was like, "Nope, you're not locking this stuff up forever."
Nice.
Like, so even it's like leaking into mainstream, and the average person's gonna listen to Glenn Beck and be like, "Oh yeah, like I can see why you wouldn't want that, because a Democrat president or a Republican president, you may never see it." But I look at it more like, they hide this shit all the time. They're slime balls.
Yeah.
And like anything they uncover, if it changes the narrative, like that's it. Like we all know Vikings probably found North America.
Yeah.
If the Egyptians found, like, I don't, like, you see like the mock-ups of these ships, and they're huge. And I'm like, yeah, like, you can't tell me that there wasn't one dude that was like, "Hey, Omar, what if we just take this sucker down the Nile and like straight across let's just see what's out there, dude." Like, in every culture or everywhere you go, you all have that adventurous friend. Did Omar drink too much mead and was like, "Let's just go, bro"? And okay, let's do it. And they sail across and they're like, "Oh, I wonder what this is." There's dudes like just hanging out near the Mississippi River. Let's go up, So like it makes sense. I just don't understand why they always want to try to the big picture is what you try to uncover, I guess.
Well,
They want to keep it. Okay.
Sorry, no, I was gonna say, didn't they find Roman coins in Seattle or something like that?
Well, there's that show on the History Channel where they're digging that.
Oak Island.
Yeah.
Oak
So
Island,
they're
yeah.
finding that stuff there.
But I mean, that precedes.
But maybe it was Billy who bought the Roman coin off of
No, that
American
could be.
Precious Metal Exchange and dropped it in the soot.
That's very possible. That's very possible. I'm just saying, but like it follows your narrative. That's before the Columbus found.
I mean, if you think about like looking back over history, so like, I mean, the Vikings were a very advanced civilization, and it wasn't like they were controlled by a government. So if you were a carpenter and you could build ships and you build a ship, it only makes sense to be like, you know what? I'm sick of sacking the same place every spring. Let's go north instead of south, or let's go east instead of west. Like, that only is common sense.
Yeah, no.
As far as
every culture's tried to go further. That's why we went to outer space, allegedly.
Yeah.
I don't think you can bounce off the firmament.
Maybe you can. We don't know.
Well, one time I was reading a book called The Lost Civilization Enigma, which was by the late Philip Coppens, that dude on Ancient Aliens with the accent, like the long, beautiful, wavy hair.
Yeah.
And he said something interesting about Egypt. Like, he totally tears Egyptology apart. But he said, and I found this interesting, he said, unbeknownst to most, the Egyptian government has had a very close working relationship with the CIA for decades, which was initially surprising because overall international relations with Egypt officially are never all that great.
Yeah.
Right.
But they basically said the CIA would take their own spy satellite surveillance, and if they saw areas that looked like potential archaeological sites, they would go to the Egyptian government and say, "Hey, send a team right here. We want to see what's actually there." And hearing things like that is so frustrating because we're sort of naively led to believe like scientific method works, scientists are so open-minded, there's just peer review and there's open exchange, and like if something withstands the peer review process, then it's legit. Well, I'm telling you, they are controlling what even makes it to that step.
Well, on those lines, like I said earlier, like I listen to Glenn Beck a lot. He had two guys on there that were getting peer-reviewed papers published.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And it was all a hoax.
Yeah, it was
all
a
they
joke.
were doing is going through and putting keywords in, like, you know, like,
it was that woke stuff.
yeah, like all woke stuff. And
Yeah.
they got like 9 papers published before they got caught.
Wow.
And they had 7 more papers or something like that in the pipeline that were being reviewed at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they got caught,
Right.
so they withdrew all their papers. But it was all like, you know, mice can be gay too, or you know, whatever. Like mice think they're dinosaurs, like just crazy stuff.
Right.
But you pick the key words out of
Yeah.
the day, you know, whatever it was
Right.
today, and they were whipping right through that peer review process. So we know that that's all garbage too.
Right. And people don't like people that aren't familiar with the process, they have this naive view that like scientists are just open-minded, they just like openly test this hypothesis and then whatever comes out, like so be it. But like they don't realize how science is actually done. Like the people funding it are like, hey, we need to see these
Yeah,
results.
right.
So have a study that gives us
Yeah.
these results. Almost all science is done like that.
Yeah, like
Well,
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
COVID's the
everything
biggest thing.
prior to 2020 about face masks shows that there's very little, you know, help of wearing any
Right.
sort of mask.
Well, if anything, like Fauci even published, I think it was 2006, where he had an interesting paper. It showed that the Spanish influenza was way worse than it should have been because people continued to wear dirty face masks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of literature that shows that they definitely don't work.
No, Fauci's legit.
Yeah, no. Any attack,
I love that guy,
I
man.
saw today, any attack on Fauci is attack on science.
Yeah,
You
follow-
must be attacking science.
follow the science.
And we're definitely not talking about aliens anymore.
Well,
What the hell happened?
going back to Egypt.
Mhm.
Now, there was I forget his name. See, this is what I'm terrible at. I've heard him on Joe Rogan. He was talking about the water erosion on the Sphinx and stuff.
Yeah.
It's way further back than
10,000
any
BC.
10,000, like way further back than. So
Yes.
dug it up, knocked the head off of, which probably was maybe a lion,
I'd say a dog head.
reptilian.
a dog head,
Dog head.
probably the dog head to match all the other hieroglyphs, and put that pharaoh's head on it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, because the pharaoh's head is way too
It's small.
smaller than the body.
you don't like if you ever look like if you don't look at the full picture,
Right.
if you just see the head, you're like, they're full
Yeah,
of
it is
shit.
what it is.
But,
Right?
yeah, but if you see the whole thing,
Right, how
you're like,
big
wow,
it
that's
is.
a lot smaller than the
Yeah,
rest of the
yeah.
thing. It's ridiculous.
Most people say lion. I'm more leaning dog.
I
It was-
can see the dog.
It
Sorry.
was probably Anubis, their jackal-headed god of embalming. And it's pretty simple. Lions, if they lay on their belly, their hip bones jut up above their back.
Yeah.
Dogs, if they do, their hip bones are flush with their back. So that's another interesting point because we see how these things are today, and we just kind of assume that they look that way from the start, but we don't realize over those couple thousand years, people could have additionally modified those things, which muddies the water more.
Right. That.
Yeah, look, just like Stonehenge,
Yeah.
that was rebuilt.
Mhm.
Like that wasn't there when
Right.
they were just, you know, like
Right, for
I
most
think
of
in
its
the 1800s,
existence.
I think early 1900s, they literally put the stones back where they
Yeah.
thought they should be.
Even for most of its existence, it was just a big circular ditch. They didn't add those blue stones till towards the end of
Well,
it.
they kind of do that with fossils.
Oh,
They kind of
yeah,
just like this is
dinosaurs.
probably what it would look like.
Yeah,
So you don't really ever. It's all anything that's ancient history. They're
Well,
like,
no,
this is
I
what it
mean-
would be like.
I mean,
You're like maybe,
They do know.
or
but
like maybe it was totally different then. You
I
know,
watched Jurassic Park, dude.
you're probably.
And I know that a mosquito could definitely bite through the thick, leathery skin of a dinosaur and draw it.
When he was talking about, dinosaurs still exist, I look at my chickens; they look like dinosaurs.
Yeah. Well, that's what a lot of them are saying. now.
yeah. Wasn't it you that had to take your tell me, Brad? Like you thought dinosaurs didn't really exist, and it's all just whale skeletons with legs
Well,
added to it.
Yeah,
That could be
well,
true.
I
That
wasn't
sounds
saying
like
that, but I was just
All right.
saying, look at this skeleton because
Well, look at the wall. That
Well,
you sent me that
yeah,
picture
so
of the
it was
the
like
hippo.
a beluga
Yeah,
whale.
it was
Oh,
a
the hippo, the one time.
Mhm.
And then like a beluga whale or something where if you added legs to that thing, it would look like a dinosaur.
Right.
Right.
Or like the hippo, if you look at it, it looks like this big mean creature with big, huge, long front, canines and like, yeah, I could make that thing. Oh yeah, if I add skin here, make it look like this. Yeah, it's just a hippo, dude. So maybe they're not even real.
Well,
it's
it's just-
just you're finding skeletons and some dude's going, I think it might look like
Well,
this.
it's the same as an alligator. If you came from another place and never seen an alligator, but you see an alligator, you're like, holy shit, it's an alligator! Look at this thing!
Yeah, and if you look at the skull, if you just look at a skeleton,
Right.
like if it died and it decomposed and bleached on like out in the middle of a parking lot, you know,
Right.
and you were like, damn, that thing is freaking that. I mean, its face is 4 foot long. It has to have been 10 foot tall.
Right.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I do like the other take. It's a sexier take. Is
Oh,
what if
sexy.
dinosaurs and humans were thrown down together? Because there's at least 2 or 3 different locations on Earth. Probably the closest one to here is called Biloxi River, Texas, where human and dinosaur footprints are both preserved together in the same layer of stone.
Yes, I've seen that.
Then you even have the Ica stones from Central and South America. I got to hold some of these in my hand at a conference. They're awesome. Literally thousands of stones depicting humans and dinosaurs together. And not just like dinosaur skeletons, like actual living dinosaurs. And I read one archaeologist take, and he was basically like, look, even if the ancients found one of these skeletons, they would not know how to reassemble it, nor would they have any idea what these things look like with muscles and skin on them. And it's crazy because, like, officially, dinosaurs die out 65 million years ago. Then, if you believe in straight up evolution, our earliest ancestors don't come on the scene until 2 million years ago. So there should be like a 63 million year gap. Yeah, we've got fossils out there where the footprints are right together. Like, people knew what these things were like. So,
Well, there's a painting from like the 1500s where, like, when they zoom in on it, it looks like dudes are riding brontosauruses.
Right.
And then, like, people were like, well, they would have over-exaggerated the camel, and that's what they would have thought a camel looked
Yeah,
like.
camel looks just like a brontosaurus.
I know, like, it's a brontosaurus, dude.
do you guys remember that cartoon Dino Riders
Yes,
when you were young?
yeah,
That was
Dino
badass.
Riders.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, where even are we now?
I don't know. We're not on
we
aliens.
definitely went from aliens.
That's
to
just
not-
organic.
Yeah, we just go
Don't
with the
stop it,
flow.
Brad.
We talk
Don't
about
stop it.
COVID,
Mhm.
but
Well, let's go back to aliens.
Okay.
Okay. We'll go back to aliens. And
we
come
hit
back.
reptile. We started to hit reptile.
Here's what I want to ask you, because I was just listening to a podcast. What aliens abducted Betty and Barney Hill?
Oh,
Ooh.
okay. That's a great question. So, a lot of people assumed it was the Greys, but it seems more likely it was a group called the Ebens, Ebens. And so this group comes up in a couple different cases, including the Serpo program.
Can we go over who Betty and Barney Hill is? So,
Absolutely.
because people don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I don't even
Absolutely.
know who they are.
yeah, no, people here.
I know who Benny Hill is.
Well, here's the thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I went on vacation a couple years ago in Portsmouth,
Uh-huh.
and
New
yeah,
Hampshire.
New Hampshire, and
Portsmouth.
well, whatever. We went up north and saw moose and shit, and I come back. I'm like, we're leaving. I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm in the same town as Betty and Barney Hill. I didn't go look at their house.
Yeah.
I didn't go look at the damn it was like an hour away from me. I could have drove and saw the spot where they got abducted.
Right.
I'm an idiot. I'm like driving home. Like I told my buddy, I'm like, I'm stupid, dude.
No, here, no argument here with that one.
So, Betty and Barney Hill, this is 1961, and that was the first well-known, credible case of alien abduction that really made national news across the United States. And if we have time, we should take a step back and also talk about the 1957 abduction of a Brazilian farmer named Antonio Villas-Boas,
Yeah, okay.
because that's very similar to some of the stuff you
Well, let's
just
go
brought
ahead
up.
and back up first. I mean, may as well do early
We have
first.
Okay.
time. We have
Yeah,
time.
we have plenty of
Okay,
time.
excellent. So Villas-Boas is farming on his tractor late at night in 1957. And a lot of skeptics look at this. They're like, well, this guy is just an ignorant farmer. But the fact that he's on a tractor is a significant detail, because most farmers in Brazil, even today, are dirt poor. So because this guy had a tractor, it showed his family was very, very well off. So he sees this bright red light come down to the field in front of him, and his tractor engine sputters and then just shuts off. He jumps off the tractor, tries to run away, and is quickly overcome by multiple beings in silver one-piece flight suits, and they haul him on board the ship. So this is where this case gets very unique, and this would technically classify as a close encounter of the 7th kind, alien-human hybridization. He recalled because it's gonna get
that's when it gets juicy.
Deep.
It's gonna get deep. And so
how deep?
He never recalled. He never recalled actually having missing time. He stripped down and he recalled being sent through some type of antiseptic mist that he thinks was probably to kill any germs he had on him. He's put in a room that is lit, but he can't see where the lights are. And that's actually a surprisingly consistent account from abductees. They're in a room that's lit and they can't see the lights anywhere. And then a few minutes later, a female extraterrestrial comes in. He said she had red hair. She was naked, but quite beautiful. And he said her face looked cat-like. And he said he was suddenly overcome with lust. And so they had an interstellar tryst right there in the room.
Interstellar tryst.
I like that.
I do.
That's such a
I'm
nice
sorry
way
to
of
cut
saying
you off,
it.
but I have to jump in.
That's a nice way of saying that, Mom.
You're a wordsmith.
Yeah,
I try to keep it clean.
wordsmith.
I do, so there's not as much post-production. And so he claimed during the act that she made barking sounds and bit at his chin, which I think we would agree would really
that sounds like Ashley.
Maybe Brad's into that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd get a big hairy mouthful if he bit at my
At your chin.
with my beard. Yeah, yeah, come on.
I thought you.
Keep it clean.
You get a big hairy mouthful. Oh my gosh, Brad.
I do keep it clean. Evidently, you don't.
My beard.
All
right.
Here's the neat twist. As she's leaving the room, he claimed that she stopped, turned around, looked at him, rubbed her belly, and pointed up, basically meaning I will raise our star child up there in outer space. So he's given his clothes back, thrown off the ship, and he recalled being furious. He felt that he was used like a good stud horse, then released. Now,
I never felt that way.
Now, interestingly, the guy ends up marrying an Earth woman. They have a bunch of kids. He becomes a well-respected lawyer in Brazil, holds the story until his dying day. Now, this is 1957.
Right.
Now, news travels so slowly back then, nobody in the United States knows about this account. So, 1961, Betty and Barney Hill are driving through the White Mountains of New Hampshire. They're coming back from Ontario, Canada, from a weekend trip they made often. They see a bright light in the sky that at first, logically, they assume is the planet Venus. But as they're driving, they see it appears to be following them. So logically, they assume it's an airplane. So curiosity gets the better of Barney, finally pulls the car off the road, gets a pair of binoculars out of the glove box, gets out of the car, looks at it, and to his shock, he sees what he described as a pancake-shaped spaceship with a row of windows on it and then silhouettes of black figures in the window. He screams to Betty, "Start the car, they're coming to get us." He jumps into the car. They both recall hearing a beeping sound like a microwave oven. Then they just totally blank out. So it's missing time. So when they come to, their car is 35 miles farther down the road than they remembered it being. By the time they got home, which was around 2 a.m., they saw that the trip took about 2 hours longer than it normally did. As they walked into the house, they saw paint peeled off the hood of their car. And over the next few weeks, they had weird aches and pains all over their bodies and a series of nightmares. And so finally, their friends encouraged them to undergo hypnotic regression with a specialist to try to uncover this missing time. And you can still actually listen to the audio of their hypnotic regression sessions online. It's straight up terrifying.
Yeah.
So they both told very similar
check
stories.
It's crazy.
It's creepy as heck. So they recalled a spaceship landing on the road in front of them, and beings came out. And curiously, they didn't describe them as gray aliens. They actually described them with red hair, which was rather unique. So they're taken onto the ship. They're put in separate rooms. Their clothes are removed, and they underwent biological examinations. Apparently, Barney gave the beings quite a start because he removed his teeth. He had false teeth.
Yes.
But Betty's examination was a lot more painful. She recalled a long needle being pushed down through her belly button, and she said she felt great pain, but then one of the beings put its hand over her forehead, and suddenly there was no more pain. And what's interesting is 1961, there was no such procedure, but one exists today for women who are pregnant if they have to have very high stakes genetic sampling done. It's called amniocentesis. So doctors today can put a long needle through the belly button and sample amniotic fluid. So isn't it interesting that Betty describes this decades before we had that procedure? Now, at this point, if you're listening, it probably sounds like any other alien abduction story. But supposedly, as they were reunited in the main room, they saw a book on board. And in English, they asked the leader if they could have the book as evidence that they'd been there. And supposedly, the leader was about to give them to the book. But then the other beings somehow communicated, no, if they have that, people will know that we are real. So supposedly, as somewhat of a consolation prize, they flashed up a 3-dimensional star map all around them that showed our star called Sol, and then lines connecting different stars that were supposedly trade routes that they had with other civilizations. And so with the help of an amateur astronomer friend named Marjorie Fish, her and Betty matched up this star system to a double star system in the southern hemisphere called Zeta Reticuli. It's only 40 light years away. Now, some skeptics like Carl Sagan came out and said, wait.
Yeah, punch face.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a punch face.
Said, there's so many stars out there, you can make any pattern of stars you want, match up somewhere. But the interesting thing is, it's a double star system. Both stars are like our own sun, but older, so it could give a civilization more chance to develop. It's only 40 light years away. It's only visible from the southern hemisphere. And Betty was just a career homemaker. She didn't know anything about science, had never been down there. And she's able to describe this system a full 6 years before astronomers knew about it. So it remains one of the more credible stories of alien abduction to this day.
When you talk light years, what did I hear? Wasn't there something like shot into space and echoed back that they thought it was supposed to take so long, but it only took like 8 years instead of like 20 years? You may have actually talked about this.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it was, let's say it was, I think, let's just say 20 light years away. So it was supposed to take 20 years to get back to us.
Yeah.
But it only took 8 years. And I think this was like a famous, like I want to say Einstein, but probably not. Because he's probably like the only dude that I know.
When in doubt, go Einstein.
Yeah, when in doubt, go
Right,
Einstein.
right.
Even though I watched a video of him and how arrogant he was when he became famous.
He was, dang.
And like someone asked him, like they said, the video that I watched showed like people, like he would give people money. Like he was like, I'm gonna give this $200,000 to Billy because he ate coins and showed that it didn't kill him. Yeah,
What? Are you serious?
Honestly. And then the other one was like, someone asked him about the moon, and he was like, it's just a big cloud. Like he was just being a goof.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it was like, I mean, maybe he was being serious.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know. Maybe it was just a big cloud.
Right.
But yeah, there was I don't know. They sent whatever, like a communication or something out into space.
You're not thinking about the Arecibo message, are you?
And it came back like way faster than they thought it was.
That's the Arecibo message.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so they beamed, Sagan and Frank Drake beamed that at a star cluster.
Punch face.
Yeah. I got my own theory on Sagan too, but that star cluster is like 25,000 light years away. And so if it did reach an alien civilization, it would take 50,000 years round trip. But then at a crop circle in England,
that's
an answer shows up like 20 years
This was
later.
your show.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right.
No, Sagan, to me, I think Sagan comes from a long line of scientists that are basically on the government payroll to publicly debunk all these things. Because when the Majestic 12 documents first leaked, you saw a lot of guys in the group that were military, intelligence, guys you would expect to see. But then in the group was this one name that at first people assumed it had to be a hoax. They couldn't figure out why he was in there. Was a Harvard astronomer named Donald Menzel, who is a very, very public debunker of UFO phenomenon. So I think that begins a long line. You got Donald Menzel, you got Carl Sagan, you got this one woman in the SETI program named Jill Tarter. I think they basically take prominent scientists, get them on the in, and then say, hey, publicly at least, anytime something credible comes out, we're going to push you out there. You need to just say this is nonsense.
It's like CNN.
Yeah. And I think Sagan is part of that.
Well, any news station.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Nazis, where they would just. Hey, we even got our guest.
You got this.
He's digging it. We got you some Boss water.
How about that? Look at that.
Hey, we treat our guys
This
good
isn't bad.
here.
This isn't bad. Got pistachios, gloss. I'm good.
I mean, it's just like everything else. they bring in the big names that, the 60-year-old dude who's watched Walter Cronkite for his whole life believes to destroy anything that like is talked about because
that's the way it goes.
And that's why like the whole like disclosure coming up, because it's supposed to come out next week, but like it's already getting leaked that it's nothing.
It's nothing. It's
but
gonna
like,
be nothing.
Like my whole thing is if what you're saying is real, I mean, with all the technology we have, we're watching little like green Tic Tacs fly around or whatever. They're telling us it's Tic Tacs. I don't freaking know. I can't read radar. But like with all the technology we have, you think you'd be able to give us a clear picture? Is there like a baby on board sticker like stuck to their their window, right? But like, I mean, they can literally look in your window with satellites and like, see what you're doing.
Right.
But we get like this grainy image.
Right.
Well, officially, and I mean, this is your wheelhouse, but almost all that footage is from the FLIR cameras, the forward-looking infrared.
Right.
And I don't think the resolution is nearly as good on those as the optical ones.
Yes, but there's got to be... It can't just be that camera on the front of the plane. There's got to be another camera on there. Okay? Like, I mean, I'm seeing pictures of like dudes flying these jets, and they're like holding up signs like go Steelers or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But like, who's taking that picture? So there's got to be another camera. So what is the like? I know me and you have talked about this. Like, is this like the great hoax? Like, there's really nothing going on, but hey, I'm Elon Musk AI alien, and I've just shot thousands of Starlink into the sky, and they just passed over us here in the last couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
someone texted me and was like, "Oh my god, I just saw this line of like stars flying through the sky." I'm like, "It's Starlink."
So are you going with the whole Project Bluebeam?
Project Bluebeam. Yep. You knew exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
So is this fake? There's really nothing out there, which I think there's something out there. I mean, it's called space for a reason.
I don't know. I think there's something out there. Is it third dimensional? Is it? Well,
I always find it funny. Like, I don't go anywhere without a gun. So, like, if an alien spacecraft and 4 dudes in a silver suit start walking towards me, like, they getting shot, dude. Like, especially at, like, 2 in the morning. Now,
I'm glad you're our first person there to talk to them.
Maybe I'm going to throw bottled water at them, like, in signs. I don't know. But they getting something towards them. Like, they ain't just taking me and probing me in their ship. Right. Making me sleep with some redhead because I got a hot wife upstairs. I don't need to sleep with that redhead. So, like, what's going on, dude?
Right. A lot of different directions you can go with that one there. I think the Bluebeam thing, like, so basically for anybody listening, Project Bluebeam.
Wait a minute. Anybody listening? You don't think no one's listening?
No, of course I do. I'm trying to relate it to the listeners.
I'm just joking with you.
So Project Bluebeam is this idea that the United States would actually fake an alien invasion is basically a new version of the Patriot Act as another way to take away additional freedoms to protect us. So I'd never been a big believer, but I have been wondering whether through Starlink, through different leaks from the Hillary Clinton email dumps, whether they might not be able to turn the entire sky into essentially a television screen.
Right.
Because basically, like, back during World War II, the Nazis used to project the image of the Virgin Mary over the French trenches. And that was World War II. So just fast forward about 70 years, could you not do that on the whole sky? And so some people think that, people sort of assume, well, they're going to disclose this, they're going to throw us a bone here. They never just throw us a bone. Never. No. It's always about control. And so could this be another way to basically protect us? And for those listening, I'm giving air quotes right now, to take away more freedoms. My only issue with Bluebeam is it's kind of like Pandora's box or Aladdin's lamp. Like, once you let that genie out, it's not going back in. So, like, if you tell everybody, yeah, we're warding off an alien invasion, you can't then turn around a couple months later and be like, hey, like, aliens don't exist again. Like, people are going to know at that point, like, something's out there.
Sure. Well, Warren Van Braun's secretary, sorry, it's put my hand in my mouth. Her secretary said that at first it's going to be terrorism, and then it's going to be the alien invasion.
Von Braun's secretary said that?
Yes, it's a clip of it. It says,
I'll check that out. That's interesting.
but now that could be what this is. They can project anything they want on the screen or the sky. It could
Right.
be Jesus or Allah or
Right.
whatever, and then everybody's going to fall in line to whatever they want. Or it could be just an alien spaceship. Or,
I'm shooting at that sucker, dude.
well, I know you are. 'Cause
Yeah.
Do you remember Independence Day with Will Smith? Like
Mhm.
they're like playing these announcements like in cities like please don't shoot at the ships.
Yeah,
That's starting an
that's good.
interstellar war.
That's gonna be me.
No.
I'm not gonna be standing on there doing like a dance.
You're not going to hold a sign.
holding a sign saying welcome.
Welcome.
I'm gonna be like, remember Invasion? Was it Invasion Los Angeles or whatever? Like that's gonna be me running through the streets shooting aliens, dude.
Right.
I'm not gonna be scared of them dudes. I'm gonna shoot at them.
Well, that was
Unless they got a phaser set to stun, and then I'll be in trouble. Dude.
but that on his headstone, Warren Bravard's headstone has the thing for the big little text that says that there is an firmament over the earth.
I think I've heard that. I'm gonna have to read up on that because I'm up to like 12 different theories on the Apollo moon landings.
Right.
But one of them is if this is a prison planet,
Which I think it is.
Yeah,
and it
I
could
mean,
be.
it would make total sense. I mean, we got to get up and go to work every day.
Well, they're holding
and
our soul.
slave away. I mean, doesn't
holding-
that just make sense that we're a slave?
I've
planet?
always I've heard things that says if when you die, do not go towards the lake, or they're going to put you back on this planet.
It's so funny you say
You know
that.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's really funny you say that because I was actually just reading. It's about 300 pages, and I found it online. It's this PDF from this Army flight nurse who was basically recruited into being the translator for the only survivor of the Roswell crash.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. Her name was Matilda O'Malley. And she was basically brought in to autopsy the other ones. But then they had one that survived, who was supposedly a female extraterrestrial named Errol. And she was the only one there that could actually receive images from Errol. She said she didn't speak. She said there wasn't even a mouth. It was just thought projections into her head. And so this basically went on, and she had like months that she would basically go in and be her translator. And that's a common theme from the Errol documents, that this is basically a prison planet. And souls exist. They cannot be destroyed. But basically vagabonds from everywhere in the galaxy are sent here. Like free thinkers, people who are artists, people that don't fit the mold of other civilizations. These souls are sent here.
That sucks,
And then
dude.
basically they're trapped here. And so you die, and then the reincarnation is basically somewhat of a trap where you're just put right back in another body. So we can't be destroyed, but basically we're just stuck here. So bringing it back to Apollo, one of my more far out takes with Apollo is, what if when they got up into space, they realized that there was that barrier there? And so they basically had to stay in Earth orbit. Whether it was the Van Allen belts, whether it was just the magnetic field in general. But I kind of liken it to like if you're playing a video game and your character gets to the edge of the world, like they project the rest out there, but your character just like
Bangs
runs right.
bangs
Right.
into it, yeah.
And it doesn't move.
They realize this in the Apollo missions. Like maybe they can send space probes through, but actual human-rated ships can't get through. They couldn't tell the public that. Everybody'd freak out. So they basically simulated some of this from Earth orbit to hide the fact that the firmament really is out there.
Well, I always thought, what if it was just a really giant snow globe? Like, what if our whole galaxy is in our snow globe? So you could shoot out of Earth, go to the moon, go to Mars, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But that's all in a giant dome. You know, just a bigger.
Almost like the ending of the original Men in Black, where they
Yeah, I
zoom
was
out
just
and out,
thinking
and
that.
like our universe is just like a marble,
Right,
and
yeah.
aliens
right.
are just shooting marbles. Couldn't roll it out. I just think it's fascinating that you brought that up because, like, I'm just reading a whole big book about that right now.
No, I've always thought that. I mean, what brings me to another thing I read before. Like the moon was placed here to extract our negative energy. Like they live off our negative energy, like the archons put the moon there.
Yeah.
And that's why they always tell you to not to go to bed angry. Like, you ever hear that from someone? Don't go to bed angry, because when you go to bed angry, they suck the energy out of you and take that up. That's like,
Maybe that's why I'm tired.
Well, look at the
That's
media.
me.
Look at all the fear porn they peddle.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because
that's all it
somebody
is.
feeding off of that negative energy.
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that, on one hand, if the moon wasn't there, life on Earth might not be where it is, because it acts like a counterweight on the Earth. Like, I've read, if the moon wasn't there, Earth would spin so much faster, we would have constant 100-mile-per-hour winds. But there's also ancient cultures, like Aboriginal cultures, that say that their ancestors were here
You never saw the moon.
prior to the moon even being placed in orbit.
Right.
And they have
I've heard
stories
that.
about the moon being parked in orbit. And that may have happened around the Great Flood time, that the new gravitational disturbance of this new object here caused the floodwaters to rise.
Or was that story where they land on the moon? It's like, dong!
Yeah,
It rang.
they shot rockets or something into it, like
Yes.
and it like echoes
On a
for-
couple different missions
Yeah.
they did. They did it on Apollo 12. They basically dropped the ascent stage of the lunar module. So when the lunar module would fire back up to rendezvous with the command module, after they are docked and everything is safe, they drop that piece back down. And they wanted to see if they could trigger the seismic sensors from Apollo 11. And not only did they trigger them, but the moon rang like a bell for almost an hour. Then on Apollo 13, even though there was the accident, they couldn't land, they could still do some science. NASA had the astronauts remotely redirect one of the empty stages from the Saturn V to also hit into the moon. And this time it triggered seismic sensors from Apollo 11 and 12, and it rang like a bell for over 3 hours. And even mainstream scientists are like, the only way that's possible is if there's big hollow areas in the moon. And in 2014, NASA actually sent up a mission called the Grail mission. Awesome name. It was 2 different space probes that followed each other in orbit around the moon, and they mapped all the hollow areas inside the moon. So it's definitely hollow.
So what you're saying is, the moon is a big giant piece of Swiss cheese.
Not wrong.
You ever see Will Ferrell?
Carry.
What if the moon was just a big giant piece of cheese?
I was going to ask him what Tom Hanks thought about it, Apollo 13.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he knew.
Well, one night I was up in the middle of the night listening to Up All Night FM, and what was the Coast to Coast.
Yeah.
He used to scare the
Oh, I love that.
shit out of me,
Art
man.
Bell?
Art Bell.
Yeah.
Art
Dude,
Bell.
when he would like, hold on, hold your thought.
All right.
I used to work at a job where I worked night shift, and I used to just drive around the perimeter of something all night long by myself for like, well, not all night, half the night, so for like 4 hours. And he'd have episodes on there where like I'd have the windows up, it'd be like 900 degrees.
Yeah.
I'd be scared shitless. He was playing like Bigfoot howling, and I'd be like, "Oh, good Lord, he's gonna come get me!" And I had guns now.
Well, my favorite thing was always like, I was in my house and there was 2 aliens sitting with me and a Bigfoot, and he'd be like, what did they say to you?
Yes,
But that's what was great about it.
yes, it was great.
Well,
He
no,
would have people calling with all kinds of great stories. He never judged them.
No.
Just let them
No,
know.
Yeah,
just let
that's
them
why I
go.
like the show,
Yeah.
because like they had that nut job on there, you know, it's a nut job because
Yeah.
she's like combining like 6 different theories.
Right.
Like I had like ancient Egyptians and aliens and
Right.
the Bigfoot. And he's like,
And the
what?
guy from no,
And then he'd be like,
never.
well, what did the aliens say to you?
Yeah.
And then she would go on, and he'd be like, interesting.
Yeah. He was good.
He was great.
Good, yeah.
No, but he said that they had a guy on talking about, was like, when the moon when we landed on the moon,
Mhm.
we found spaceships and other like things that we've already been there like thousands of years before already. So, that was the theory, that we've been there numerous times already. This is like our whatever time.
Yeah.
Well, that
A
goes.
rebirth.
Yeah, well, this goes
A
back to
rebirth,
the
yeah.
like we've been here longer than what they're telling us. Story.
Well, if you want to check out, it's one of my favorite rabbit holes. If you want to just scare yourself to death sometime, Google search Apollo 20
20.
late at night. It was my first presentation I ever did on MUFON. It was this alleged found footage of a secret joint U.S.-Soviet mission to the lunar far side, where they explored the remnants of a crashed spaceship that they photographed on both Apollo 8 and Apollo 15. Now, some of the footage is definitely hoaxed. Some of the footage, though, is so good, I have no idea how they would have hoaxed it. And the actual photographs, you've basically got this 3 to 4 kilometer long elliptical ship crash into the side of a crater called Isaac D. And it is a freaking awesome story. So you need to check that out. But there's that angle that there were actually remnants on the moon. There's even the angle, what if the Nazis
you're bringing it back around for us.
We're bringing you on.
I'm good with this. What if they actually got to the moon first? So, like, by the early 50s, the Army had a top secret program, or is unclassified, but everybody knows about now. It was called Project Horizon, where they actually already had blueprints for a lunar base. But one of the ideas is the Nazis actually reached there first with their anti-gravity disc program. And so it's crazy to me to think, just for a second, imagine, what if that were actually true? What if a different country got there first, so then the United States had to go back and redo the moon landings with more primitive chemical rocket technology, just so they could actually establish the history of us going to the moon?
What I always find funny about the moon, when you look at the pictures of, like, the landing crafts, it always looks like someone took tinfoil, aluminum foil from my dresser, painted it gold, and wrapped it around everything. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, isn't space like this giant vacuum? And it looks like plastic bags and aluminum foil wrapped around everything. And I'm like, how's that protected, dude?
Some places the lunar lander, the LEM, were only as thick as a piece of aluminum foil. Now, officially, I can give you both sides to it. Officially, they could build it like that because it only operated in the vacuum of outer space. So it didn't need to be aerodynamic or heavy duty. At the same time, there are certain pictures of the LEM from certain sides where you're exactly right. It looks like it looks like tinfoil and black construction paper, and then what just looks like tape. So
Right.
I know the engineering behind it. I know they had to save a ton of weight, but some places you're like, this thing looks pretty sketchy.
Yes, how did this come out, enter the moon, shoot rockets off? Because, like, when I was in the Marine Corps, I dealt with explosives.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when something blows up and shoots, so like a rocket, like it creates, the thrust and the backdraft. So, like, I'm thinking to myself, like, how's that piece of aluminum foil, like, I can't even, like, crinkle it up without putting my thumb through it on Earth. Right. But, like, how's that survive in space?
Officially, there would not be backdraft on the moon because that would be an eddy effect with air. But astronauts have given conflicting stories about that. For example, any of the pictures of the LEM on the moon never show a crater underneath it. And there should be a crater there. Now, I've heard scientists argue, well, because it's a vacuum, it just blew the dust straight out. But then a lot of the astronauts said they had trouble landing because it was blowing so much dust back up at them. So you get all kinds of conflicting and contradictory stories about how the physics behind this actually works.
Well, what I would ask is, why don't you just ask Stanley Kubrick how it went?
That's one of the theories. Yeah.
Yeah, because in what's the
Shining.
One? Yeah,
Shining.
Room 230.
And the kids wearing
the NASA
sweater.
Everybody wears NASA sweaters now.
The moon room.
Yeah, the moon room.
Yeah.
Well, that was a big theory that he shot the lunar landing.
Well, that's one of the theories. Now, I would point out a different culprit, and a lot of people don't know this place was real, but it was called NASA's Gantry facility, and it was in none other than Langley, Virginia.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, isn't it? And you can...
What else is there?
Well, yeah.
I can't think what else is in Langley. And you can actually find pictures of this facility online. It's basically a huge crane structure where they would suspend the astronauts, the LEM, from this thing so they could get the experience of microgravity. And during the Apollo era, late 60s, NASA made a perfect replica of the lunar surface at the base of it. And this thing was about as big as a football field. And I've actually seen photographs of people standing there, and it's clearly at the gantry facility because they're not wearing spacesuits. And the lighting effects are eerily similar to what was on Apollo 11. The other really weird thing is,
it's weird.
If you look at the footage of Armstrong coming down the ladder, most of the horizon is missing.
Right.
And I've seen where European scientists have like analyzed it, and they show how quickly the horizon cuts off. And they're like, the only way that that's even possible is if they landed on a tiny plateau that was hundreds of meters high, which they didn't. The curious thing is you could see out about 100 yards, which is about as big as the terrain under NASA's gantry facility. So everybody talks Kubrick, maybe Kubrick, but if I found a real smoking gun, at least for Apollo 11, it would totally be the gantry facility.
Well, I'm still saying Kubrick.
Well, I always said, why is there not a bunch of stars in the background? Now I get it was the overexposure of the cameras and blah, 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 blah. But, like, I would have to think, like, either it's super bright up there. Right? Because that's the bright side of the moon. Right. So there's, like, a light on. No matter where that thing is in orbit, there's a light on it, right?
Except lunar far side. So, like, let me just speak on that, because this is my wheelhouse.
Here we go, baby.
All right, so if you accept the Gemini missions are real, so 2-man ships stayed in Earth orbit.
I don't.
They don't. Let's just say hypothetically, there's no stars in any of those pictures. So here's the official explanation: is the shutter speeds were fast enough to focus on the lunar surface. If they kept the shutters of the Hasselblads open long enough to get the faint light of stars, it would have totally overexposed the surface, which was the main scientific mission. So far, that's okay. During the Apollo 11 press conference, though, Armstrong says something that technically makes sense, but then Michael Collins is caught in a lie. There was this British reporter, Sir Richard Moore, and he asked,
Sir,
seemingly
it's official now.
Innocuous question, could you see the stars? And Armstrong said, when we were on the surface, the lunar surface was so bright that if we looked up, we couldn't see anything, which is technically okay. But then Michael Collins leans in and goes, I don't really recall seeing any stars. And Armstrong does one of these, and they call it the shut-up elbow. He doesn't physically hit him, but he jerks towards him.
Yeah.
Because Armstrong's really smart, and he knows that Collins had a totally different experience than he and Buzz.
Yeah.
He's up in the lunar, or the command module, and when he's around the lunar far side, he's totally cut off from the sun. He would have been able to get the best view of the sky that anybody in history would have. And when he was on the Gemini mission, Collins spoke at length about how beautiful the stars were. And suddenly by Apollo 11, he's not seeing any stars. So the lack of stars can go different directions. Technically, I can see why it wouldn't show up in the photographs, but some astronauts, for some reason, have just straight up lied about it.
So what the other question I always had is, how the hell did they talk to Nixon on a landline?
Yeah. Hello?
Oh, hey, buddy.
All of a
We
sudden.
don't have cell phones, but sure thing, dude. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, right. Like
That
right
poor
now in
buddy.
your basement, I'm only getting 2 bars.
Yeah,
Several
right.
years later.
Hey, we're not in the
Where
basement.
we live in Greenwood,
Yeah.
there's dead spots.
I know, right?
Osama bin Laden ran an entire terrorist network.
Yeah, right.
We only get 2 bars, and if I'm on the phone driving down this hill,
Right.
it totally cuts
I
it
know,
off.
right? It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
But Nixon talked to the
I know.
moon.
I know. That was officially with the high gain antenna, but a lot of people have asked that.
The high gain. I
Yeah.
have one on my
I have one
car.
of those right here. Look.
Stick it up your ass.
That's my CD antenna. That's what that is.
I know. At first, I thought it was a fishing rod.
Let everybody know out there that Brad is holding a CB antenna. It's not plugged in.
It's not plugged in. That's my emergency communication in case shit goes down.
Hey, so are there Captain and Cokes for the rest of like the
Do you
talent
want
here?
one?
Do I just have to drink this Voss water?
Do you
which is
want
good.
one?
I do want
Oh,
one.
absolutely, I'll make you one. Oh.
Totally like one.
And it's not Captain and Coke.
It's Captain.
Crown and caffeine for
Oh, that's right.
So it
That's right.
doesn't
It is
keep you up
Crown.
at
Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Oh,
Mickey
O'Shea's
O'Shea's.
Irish or vodka. It's the best vodka you can get. It's so smooth. It's so fresh. But listen, my wife told me I was having a hard time drinking whiskey. She said, you got to slow down on the whiskey. So I switched to Mickey O'Shea's Irish vodka. It's
Do you have
so-
a promo commercial for it yet? You should do one with an Irish accent.
Well, I don't know if I can do an Irish accent. I have an Irish private area.
Mickey O'Shea's Irish vodka.
There you
Best thing to happen to potatoes since the famine.
go. There we
Nailed
go.
it. We're going to have to have him back on a little bit more.
No, we're still